She was Hollywood royalty, just not the kind you see on the screen. Ronni Chasen built her career making Hollywood stars shine brighter, but one night after a movie premiere, she didn't make it home. Gunshots rang out in Beverly Hills and left Hollywood with a mystery it still can't quite solve. Hey guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I am finally actually feeling like October is here. We're over a week into it now, but I finally am like, okay, this is actually my favorite time of year. I love this time of year. Things are getting spooky, and I love that.
They are. Have you or your kids figured out costumes for this year?
I asked my youngest recently, and he basically had no ideas. And I was like, well, we need to start thinking about it. Otherwise, it's going to be like the week of Halloween, and we're going to be picking through whatever is left, like we do every year, because we go through this every year. I haven't even asked my oldest what his plans are. I feel like now he's at the age where he likes to do things with friends, like,
oh yeah,
and group costumes and group things. So I don't know that they have even figured out what they're doing. I think I'm going to go as Scary Chucky this year.
Okay, first of all, Chucky's scary. You can't be scary, Chucky. That's just his thing. Okay, please. You know that's like my all-time, like I was nicknamed Chuck in high school because I was so scared of Chucky. So
oh no.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to dress as Chucky, and then I'm going to come over and scare you.
No. Okay. Well, my son is going to do the dinosaur, the inflatable one, and he tried it on yesterday. And I went ahead and bought Target had 40% off. So I bought a fish costume that you just put over your head. Because I know as soon as we get started, he's not going to be able to breathe. You can't grab, it's just going to be terrible. So I was like, I got to back up all the way. I'm going to be a Diet Coke can, which is not very exciting, but Target actually.
How have you not done that already? I love it.
I don't know. I love it. I was like, this is so easy. So yeah, I'm excited. And my daughter, actually she wants to be SpongeBob and her friend's going to be Patrick. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes over here.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my kids have gone through phases where they want to have really complicated and complex costumes, and those are kind of fun sometimes. We've definitely had some really cool ones over the years that my husband has really gotten into,
I remember the
Transformer.
Yes.
Yeah,
Transformer was
really
amazing
good. But we've had definitely some that are really good, but I always am fine with it when my kids are last year my oldest was him and his friends were doing Minions, and I'm like, that's the easiest thing you could possibly do for me, so thank you.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, so we're not doing anything too crazy. I feel like now that my kids are getting older, there's not a lot of hype about Halloween anymore. I mean,
right.
I'm always hype about Halloween, but I don't know. They're into it, but not in the same way they used to be. So
yeah, so as the person that's going a Scary Chucky, I cannot believe this. This is truly terrifying. I'm just going to go like that all day on Friday, because Halloween's on a Friday this year. It is.
I decided I'm just going to wear my Chucky outfit and just walk around town all day looking like that.
Okay. Well, don't come around here. That's all I have to say.
All right. So we'll get into the story for this week. This is a story that I've actually never heard of, and I was surprised, and you'll see why as we get into the story.
Yeah.
So it was just after midnight in Beverly Hills on November 16th, 2010. A Mercedes-Benz was making its way down North Whittier Drive, headed home from the kind of event that really defines Hollywood. It was a red carpet movie premiere. The driver of the car was a woman named Ronni Chasen, and if that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, you're not alone, as I just said. She wasn't an actress or a director or anyone that you might recognize from the movie poster itself, but inside the industry, Ronni truly was a powerhouse. She was the publicist behind some of the biggest films and award campaigns in Hollywood. But on this night, Ronni wasn't basking in the glitz and glamour. She was just another 64-year-old woman heading home after a long workday. She called her office one last time to leave a to-do list for her staff, and 6 minutes later, she was sitting at a red light when someone opened fire on her car. Multiple shots ripped through her window, and they hit her as she sat behind the wheel. Somehow, Ronni managed to keep driving for a quarter mile before her car swerved off the road and crashed into a streetlight. Neighbors in this upscale neighborhood woke up to the sound of either gunfire or the crash itself, depending on who you ask. One woman said that she looked out her window and saw the Mercedes crumpled against the pole. Her family rushed outside and found Ronni still alive, but barely clinging to life. She was bleeding heavily from her chest and struggling to breathe. Paramedics rushed her to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but by 1:30 in the morning, she was pronounced dead. It was determined that Ronni was shot with a .38 caliber revolver. Investigators believed the shooter had to be an experienced marksman. Early reports said Ronni was shot 5 times from the outside of the car, though that number would later be corrected to 4 times. But the damage was done, and Hollywood had its latest scandal. Within hours, news spread that one of the most connected publicists in the industry had been assassinated, or possibly ambushed, on one of the quietest streets in Beverly Hills. And the big question was, why?
So before we go any further, let's talk about Ronni. Ronni wasn't born into the glitz of Beverly Hills. She was born Veronica Sue Cohen on October 17, 1946, in Kingston, New York, to parents Carolyn and Irving Cohen. She grew up in New York City and Washington Heights in Riverdale with her brother Larry. Their father was a real estate broker and their mother was a homemaker. And Ronni was especially close to her mom, so much so that she cared for her mom until her death in 2000. As a kid, Ronni was described as being athletic and gregarious, but she had her quirks too. Her brother Larry once told the New York Times that she actually won yo-yo contest hosted by Duncan Toys. And when she was just 5, she had her first celebrity encounter at Madison Square Garden, where she met the actress Dale Evans, who was actually Roy Rogers' wife, nicknamed the Queen of the West. And Ronni was so thrilled by this meeting, she told everyone on the subway ride home, "I touched the Queen of the West." And Larry said that moment was the beginning of it all. Ronni was also very proud of her Jewish heritage. Her rabbi later said that she lived her life with Judaism at her core. Once, while at the Venice Film Festival during the high holidays, she actually walked the streets of Venice until she found a synagogue where she could attend services. And that really summed up Ronni. She worked hard, played hard, but she never lost sight of her roots.
Ronni studied journalism at Hofstra University, but her first crack at showbiz was in front of the camera. In the late 1960s, she played bit parts in soap operas like Guiding Light, and she even appeared on The Patty Duke Show. Once she moved to Los Angeles in the 1970s, she dropped the last name Cohen and adopted Chasen, and this was reportedly after the famous Hollywood restaurant Chasen's. But acting just wasn't where she thrived. Her brother put it bluntly and said, rejection of acting wasn't for her. She was a natural publicist. Oh, how she loved to throw a party. And he was right. Ronni really carved out her lane in publicity and Oscar campaigning, and she was very good at it. She worked her way up at American International Pictures and became executive VP of motion pictures at Rogers & Cohen, then senior VP of publicity at MGM. By 1989, she'd launched her own boutique firm, Chasen & Company, which she still ran at the time of her death. Her specialty was representing composers and songwriters. Think people like Diane Warren, Hans Zimmer, and also campaigns that brought home Oscar Gold for films like Driving Miss Daisy, The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Slumdog Millionaire, Chicago, The Hurt Locker. I really could go on and on. Morgan Freeman once said of her that she is someone he greatly admired and she will be remembered. Diane Warren even dedicated her Golden Globe win for the song You Haven't Seen the Last of Me from Burlesque to Ronni after her death. So this is definitely, if you don't know, didn't know who Ronni was, you definitely have seen, heard, or know of something that she has been involved in for sure. But it wasn't just about work. She supported charities like the Tower Cancer Research Foundation, Project Rebirth, Big Sisters, and the Scott Newman Foundation. And friends described her as a positive force of nature and an unshakable support when she was in your corner. She wore Armani suits, she collected art, and she also had some personal plans for the future as well, such as hip surgery in 2011. And after that, she was going to go spend 2 months in Paris. She never remarried after divorcing really young, and she had no children, but as you can imagine, with everything I just listed, her life was extremely full. And we have more to get into after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
The holidays are coming up fast, and I always tell myself I'll get the house ready early. Then suddenly people are showing up, and I'm frantically trying to make things look festive and clean. But this year, I'm ahead of the game thanks to Wayfair.
I swear Wayfair really does have everything. I went on to look for some holiday serveware and ended up down a rabbit hole of guest room decor. What did you end up getting, Melissa?
Okay, this isn't quite holiday related, but I did get this beautiful cat litter box enclosure that looks like furniture. So it hides Luna's litter box, and you wouldn't even know that's where the cat does her business, which she very much does. And then I also grabbed this peel and stick wallpaper from Wayfair that completely transformed the hallway. And it's such an easy and affordable way to make it feel put together before everyone starts coming over.
That's actually genius. Between the free and fast shipping, all the decor, and even furniture options, Wayfair really is the one-stop shop. Whether it's getting the guest room ready, picking up cookware for hosting, or finding a chic, cat-friendly upgrade, Wayfair makes it easy to get your home holiday ready.
Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So you've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. And I did too. I was really skeptical, but after seeing how many dermatologists recommended Nutrafol, I decided to give it a shot. I take the Women's Balance formula, and after just a few short months, I really started to notice a difference, like less shedding in the shower, and my hair just looked thicker and healthier.
It's wild how much that kind of change can affect your confidence. Like when your hair feels good, you feel good. And Nutrafol is different because it's physician formulated, clinically tested, and it actually targets the root causes of hair thinning, from stress to nutrition to hormones. Adding it to your daily routine is super simple. You just take 4 pills daily with a meal, and you can even get automated deliveries with free shipping.
And that's because Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF Content certified, the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements.
See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is giving our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code MOMS. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code MOMS. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code MOMS.
And now back to the episode. Before the break, we talked a little about who Ronni Chasen was. She was a trailblazer in Hollywood publicity and really a woman whose story seemed destined for a happy ending. But back in Beverly Hills, investigators were facing a very different picture. A beloved publicist was dead, her car riddled with bullets, and not a single clue pointed to who did it or why. And the news of Ronni Chasen's murder spread like wildfire. The same day she died, investigators were already combing through her office and even seizing computers, really just hoping for anything that might point to a motive. And that's how big this was. Hollywood's go-to Oscar publicist being gunned down in Beverly Hills was the kind of story that made national headlines instantly. And her friends didn't hesitate to put their money where their heartbreak was. Harold Matzner, the chairman of Palm Springs International Film Festival, as well as being a very close friend of Ronnie's, offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Another longtime friend, Michael Levine, added $25,000 of his own. That's $125,000 on the table within days. And that tells you 2 things. 1, that Ronni was incredibly well-connected, and 2, that her circle wasn't convinced this was some random act. But when the shock wore off, the rumor mill kicked in. One of the earliest and most persistent theories was that Ronni had been the victim of a targeted hit. Hollywood thrives on gossip, and boy, do I love Hollywood gossip. And I don't like this kind of thing, but other stuff. But this is perceived as Hollywood gossip. So people wondered, was it mob related? Did she cross the wrong person in the industry? And then someone floated the idea of gambling debts. But her brother and others close to her shot that down immediately, and they insisted that Ronni had no such baggage. Other theories got tossed into the mix too. Maybe it was road rage, maybe mistaken identity. And at that point, police really weren't ruling anything out. But what they didn't have were absolutely any clear suspects and no solid motive. And that's where this case makes an unusual leap to primetime. So just days after Ronnie's murder, her story was featured on America's Most Wanted. Now, if you know the show and you grew up watching it like Mandy and I did, you know that they usually spotlight cold cases or fugitives who've been on the run for a while. It was almost unheard of to feature a case still in its earliest days of investigation. You were constantly seeing things like, 25 years ago, this father of two left, in the middle of the night, never returned. Have you seen him? And this is very, very different to be like a few days out and they have enough to make a segment on it. But of course, Ronni was well connected and her friends knew how to pull strings, and that's exactly what they did. And it worked. A man named Laramie Baquet was watching and decided to call in a tip. So he actually lived in a rundown apartment complex on Santa Monica Boulevard called the Harvey Apartments. Rent there ran about $650 a month, and according to Laramie, the place was a mix of struggling actors and musicians, as well as families being packed into tiny units, and also people battling mental health and addiction issues. It wasn't exactly what you think of when you think of Beverly Hills. And one of his neighbors was a man named Harold Martin Smith. And Laramie thought Harold had just been acting, suspicious. The tip might have seemed flimsy to outsiders. Laramie's just this guy with a weird neighbor, but it would set off a chain of events that led investigators to a man with a violent past, a growing paranoia, and ultimately a confrontation that ended in another sudden death.
So let's talk more about Harold Martin Smith. Once he entered the investigation, there was quite a lot to learn about him. And if Ronni was someone who represented the polished side of Hollywood, then Harold represented Hollywood's underbelly. He lived at the Harvey Apartments on Santa Monica Boulevard, which is the same place that Laramie called his home. So Laramie admitted that he actually didn't know Harold very well. He described them, though, as being polite and maybe even sensitive, and he said that sometimes they would share food from the food bank. But if you asked other people in the building, Harold had a different reputation. A guy named Sammy told CBS that Harold basically just loitered out in front of the building for hours on end every single day. He said, quote, "To me, he was mental, criminal, but not so sophisticated. He had very bad vibes," end quote. This guy said he didn't think Harold was capable of pulling off a professional hit, though. Then there was another neighbor, Terry, who said that Harold, quote, "had a screw loose." At one point, he literally walked into her apartment completely uninvited, and she had to call the police. But not everyone thought he was dangerous. Another neighbor named Robin said that Harold was friendly and loved to chat. He always worried about finding steady work because of his criminal record, and he mentioned a wrongful termination lawsuit that he had filed. He told Robin that he was expecting a payout from this lawsuit. And that brings us to Harold's rap sheet. By 2010, he had actually racked up a string of convictions. In 1985, there was a burglary in New York. And then he moved to California in 1991, and he got another burglary conviction. By the mid-90s, he was charged with robbery in Oregon. In 1998, he hit rock bottom. There were several robberies that landed him with an 11-year prison sentence. And within that year, he had held a woman at knife point and attacked another woman so violently that he broke her jaw by kicking her. He ended up going to prison and wasn't released until 2007. But even after that, he still couldn't keep himself out of trouble. In 2009, he was arrested in Manhattan Beach for marijuana possession and loitering, and he did plead guilty to loitering and was fined $160, but he never paid that. By September of 2010, there was an active warrant for his arrest. And here's really what made him all the more dangerous. Under California's 3 strikes law, if Harold were to pick up another felony conviction, he could be sentenced to life. So that's kind of like looming over this whole thing. It almost goes to that, like, when you don't have a lot to lose, you're willing to lose everything kind of thing. Right. So they're like, he only has this one shot. If he's going to do anything intentional, it's going to be something big.
Right. So according to Laramie, Harold's behavior turned strange right after Ronnie's murder. Laramie claimed that less than 2 hours after the shooting, Harold showed up at his apartment asking weird questions like, have the police been here? Has there been anything on TV? And then, we haven't had this conversation. So the next morning, Harold knocked again, this time asking for $1. He said he needed to get his bike back from Beverly Hills, of all places. Laramie told The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "I was at a loss for words. I knew what this was," end quote. Now, some people do question this timeline. Ronnie's identity wasn't released publicly until later that day. So really the question is, how could Laramie have known it was connected only a few hours later? Regardless, though, Harold's behavior kept spiraling. 6 days after the murder, he was evicted for not paying rent. Laramie let him stash some of his belongings at his place in the meantime, but then things got even darker. About a week after the shooting, Harold told Laramie, quote, "If I'm not back by Thursday, take my things because I'll be resting in peace," end quote. By this point, Laramie really thought that Harold was becoming paranoid and maybe even losing his grip on reality. He even admitted later that he didn't call in the tip right away because Harold was black, he already had 2 strikes, and as Laramie bluntly put it, quote, he'd be done for. So fast forward to December 1st, 2010, and Beverly Hills detectives showed up at the Harvey apartments to talk to Harold. They found him in the lobby, told him to take his hands out of his pockets, and said they wanted to ask him about Ronni Chasen's murder. Instead of answering, Harold pulled out a .38 Smith & Wesson Model 67 revolver and shot himself in the head. He died instantly, right there in front of them. Police found a flyer in his pocket for cheap lodging that was $100 per week, and some job postings, which was proof that he was looking for work and maybe a new place to live. And when they went back to collect the stuff Harold had left with Laramie after his eviction, they claimed they found 4 empty shell casings in one of the boxes. But the story doesn't stop there. Another neighbor, Terry Gilpin, the same one who thought Harold had a screw loose, came forward after his death saying Harold had actually bragged about killing Ronni. According to her, Harold had been offered $10,000 to do it, though he was still waiting to be paid. His exact words were, quote, "You know that lady on TV, that publicist? I did it, end quote. Terry said she and her husband really just didn't believe him at the time, so they never reported it. And just like that, police were left with a dead suspect, a potential murder weapon, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. And we still have more to get into after one last break to hear word from this week's sponsors. Cooler weather is finally here, and I've officially entered my living in layers era. My go-to lately has been my Mongolian cashmere crewneck sweater from Quince. It's so soft, I basically have to force myself to wear anything else.
That sweater is such a staple. I love how Quince pieces look totally designer but don't actually cost a fortune. It's that perfect mix of cozy and put together, like I have my life together, even if you really actually don't.
And I sure don't. But I've got my eye on their cashmere baseball cap because I am a hat girl, and it's the perfect fall cap. It's soft, it's chic, and it really goes with everything. Quince makes it so easy to look polished without spending a ton because they work directly with ethical factories and they skip the middleman.
It's honestly the smartest way to refresh your wardrobe for fall, whether it's $50 cashmere, premium denim, or those wool coats that look straight off a runway. Quince gives you the quality of high-end brands for half the price, and I love that for me and you and all of us.
Find your fall staples at Quince. Go to quince.com/moms for free shipping on your orders and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/moms to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/moms. If my cat could talk, I'm pretty sure she'd tell me that I finally got something right because switching to Pretty Litter has been life-changing. And the wild part? I've actually been able to make my son the official scooper of the house. I thought I'd actually have to bribe him, but since it's not smelly, he actually does it and really doesn't complain.
I would call that a parenting win. Pretty Litter really is next level. It's soft on their paws, super easy to maintain, and it keeps the whole house smelling fresh. None of that, oh, you have a cat in here smell when someone walks in.
Exactly. Plus, I love that Pretty Litter actually helps me monitor Luna's health. The color-changing crystals can show changes in acidity or even signs of blood in her urine, which can give me so much peace of mind. And it ships free right to my door, so there's no lugging giant bags through the parking lot.
It's seriously the smartest litter switch. The ultra-absorbent crystals last longer, use less material than clay litter, and the odor control is amazing. If your cat could talk, they'd definitely say, upgrade me to Pretty Litter.
Right now, save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy at prettylitter.com/moms. That's prettylitter.com/moms to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/moms. Pretty Litter cannot detect every feline health issue or prevent or diagnose diseases. A diagnosis can only come from a licensed veterinarian. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. And now back to the episode.
Before the break, we laid out the night Ronni Chasen's life came to a violent end. We talked about the gunfire, the car accident, and the chaos that really followed. But as the sun came up over Beverly Hills, the focus really shifted. Within hours, the industry that Ronni helped build was in full-blown panic mode, and there were headlines about it, there was a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of speculation in Hollywood, and that's where the investigation really began. Once Harold Martin Smith was gone, detectives were left with one big piece of evidence, and that was the .38 caliber Smith & Wesson Model 67 revolver that he used to end his own life. If they could tie that gun to Ronnie's murder, the case would be solved. At first, though, the story just didn't line up that neatly. In early December of 2010, several newspapers reported that the gun Harold used on himself did not match the murder weapon, and that meant the police were right back at square one. But then by December 9th, just days later, Beverly Hills police suddenly announced the opposite. They said that preliminary ballistic tests showed the bullets that killed Ronni most likely did come from Harold's gun. So notice the phrasing they used, which is most likely, and of course in legal terms that means it's not a definite thing, not a 100% match, but just a very cautious probably, maybe. But still, this is enough for them to really hang their case on. From there, the official theory came into focus. This wasn't just a mob hit or an industry conspiracy. According to the police, Ronni was the victim of a random robbery gone wrong. Sergeant Mike Publicker told ABC News, quote, "We believe it was a random act, and we believe Miss Chasen was going to be the victim of a robbery." The problem with that, though, was that nothing about the scene looked like a robbery. Ronnie's purse was still inside the car, nothing appeared to have been taken, and even the logistics were really hard to imagine. Investigators said Harold had pulled up next to Ronni on his bicycle and opened fire from there. Neighbors did confirm Harold owned a bike, but as I just said, you have to imagine the scene of a man pulling up on a bicycle in Beverly Hills, somehow coming up to a Mercedes, intending to rob the person inside, but firing multiple shots into the passenger side window and then just like riding off on their bicycle. Like it just, even for someone who is really a seasoned marksman, like that scene doesn't feel like it would be likely that it would be a hit or
Yeah.
that it would be anything or a robbery or anything like that. It seems more like a riddle than like a real situation.
So, despite those glaring questions, the department pressed forward. By January 2011, which is less than 2 months after the murder, Beverly Hills police officially declared that Harold Martin Smith was the man who killed Ronni Chasen. That's it, case solved, in their words. And by 2011, they closed the investigation completely, saying they reviewed more than 150,000 pieces of evidence and tips before making that call. But in 2013, when filmmaker Ryan Katzenbach sued for access to Ronnie's autopsy report as part of his documentary 638, The Death of Ronni Chasen, more inconsistencies spilled out. First, the autopsy corrected one of the earliest mistakes. Ronni wasn't shot 5 times as news reports initially claimed. It was actually 4 shots, once in the back, once in her right arm and back, and twice in the chest. 2 of those wounds were instantly fatal. The bigger bombshell came in how the autopsy described the shooting. The reports state that an unknown vehicle pulled up next to Ronnie's car before the shots were fired. And that directly contradicts what Beverly Hills police had told the public, that Harold rode up on his bicycle, and there's a big difference and not something you're likely to mistake a car versus a bicycle. That's like pretty big. So to sum it all up, police said the ballistics most likely matched, though not definitively. They called it a robbery gone wrong, but Ronnie's perch was untouched. They painted this picture of Harold on a bike, while the autopsy describes a car, and yet Beverly Hills police still declared the case solved. Officially, Ronni Chasen's killer was Harold Martin Smith, but unofficially, the inconsistencies left plenty of room for doubt.
Even after Beverly Hills police closed the case, the media still wasn't buying it. Journalists, especially The Hollywood Reporter, kept poking holes in the official story, and they ran multiple pieces questioning not just the Harold Smith theory, but also the way the entire investigation had been handled. Thanks to the lawsuit brought by filmmaker Ryan Katzenbach, hundreds of pages of case files became public, and those files revealed details that painted a much shakier picture than this neat little robbery gone wrong conclusion. One of the biggest problems was the gun. Police had claimed early on that ballistics proved Harold's revolver killed Ronni, but the Hollywood Reporter dug into that fine print. According to the actual case files, the bullets and Harold's revolver only showed similar general rifling characteristics, and some agreement of individual characters. So in plain English, that means they couldn't say for sure if it was the same gun. The documents literally state the findings were insufficient for an identification, but yet the police still closed the case. On top of that, the Hollywood Reporter pointed out sloppy police work. For example, Ronnie's Mercedes wasn't even dusted for fingerprints on the passenger side, which is the exact side the bullets came in from. Investigators also declined to answer whether they had looked for or obtained any surveillance footage from the neighborhood, which it's Beverly Hills. This is one of the most heavily surveilled patches of real estate in this country. Surely there is footage somewhere, somebody caught something.
Absolutely. And the idea that this lady is just driving through Beverly Hills at night in her Mercedes, if someone wanted to rob her, they would have robbed her.
Right.
If they killed her, they killed her, but they would have robbed her. They would have known she had stuff with her. Because of it being in an affluent area, they're not going to shoot her and then not even take her
For
purse.
sure.
That makes absolutely no sense. So when reporters asked about those gaps years later, Beverly Hills police weren't exactly eager to revisit the case. In 2016, a spokesperson told The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "We believe this is a closed case. We have no plans to ever reopen it," end quote. Sandra Spagnoli, who became chief after the murder, insisted, quote, "My understanding is that this was investigated with care and diligence by our staff. Our evidence, including ballistics, matched. It was convincing and conclusive," end quote. And the chief at the time of Ronnie's death, David Snowden, doubles down too. He said, quote, "It was an attempted robbery that went south. There's nothing more to it than was in the initial investigation, period," end quote. But industry insiders and law enforcement experts just weren't convinced. Retired LAPD homicide detective T.T. Williams Jr. said it was bizarre that there wasn't a single piece of footage or eyewitness testimony placing Harold Smith near the crime scene that night. He told The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "There has to be some security cameras in that neighborhood that would have caught him. I mean, Beverly Hills? Give me a break. You have a black man supposedly on a bike in the middle of the night. He'd be stopped 15 times. He would have stood out like a sore thumb," end quote. And then there was the problem of who the police didn't talk to. So several people who had been at the burlesque premiere with Ronnie were never even interviewed. Even neighbors who lived right where the shooting happened, some of which who actually reached out to the police department themselves, weren't followed up with. By 2017, another 200 pages of case files were released, confirming that Beverly Hills Police Department had failed to interview multiple residents of the neighborhood where Ronnie was shot. Add to that the confusion over whether Harold supposedly shot her from a bike, while the autopsy suggested it was a car, and you can see why the official story just never really satisfied people. For Minnie and Hollywood, the Beverly Hills police didn't really solve the case. They just closed it.
Even with the Beverly Hills Police Department officially stamping the case closed, the story did not fade away. Hollywood, of course, did what Hollywood always does, and they turned it into TV. In 2011, Law & Order Los Angeles produced an episode called Benedict Canyon that was directly inspired by Ronnie's case. In their version, the victim wasn't a publicist, but a Hollywood stylist that was killed in what turned out to be a murder-for-hire plot. That was one of the earliest theories in Ronnie's real case, was that she had been targeted for a professional hit. So the episode aired in the spring of 2011, just months after Ronnie's death, which is proof that even scripted television can't resist the, twists and turns of a story of a glamorous woman gunned down in Beverly Hills. But while Hollywood dramatized it, the people closest to Ronnie were still grappling with their own doubts about how the case was actually handled. So remember Harold Matzner, that's the Palm Springs Festival chair, who offered $100,000 as reward money. So after the police pinned the crime on Harold Smith, Laramie Bakay, the neighbor who called in that tip, tried to collect, but Matzner wasn't having it. He flat out said he didn't believe that the case was solved. And he also argued the fine print, which is that the reward was specifically for the arrest and conviction of Ronnie's killer. And since Harold Smith was dead, there was no arrest nor conviction, and therefore there would be no payout. And he admitted that many of Ronnie's friends weren't comfortable with how quickly the police had tied things up, and they weren't convinced Harold Smith was the real killer, or at least he wasn't maybe not the only one.
Laramie, though, wasn't ready to walk away. He actually sued both Matzner and Michael Levine, who pledged the extra $25,000 for a combined total of $150,000. Eventually, though, the lawsuits were settled. Laramie got some money, though not the full reward. And what did he do with it? He bought himself a green Camaro. Years later, he told The Hollywood Reporter that the whole thing left him scarred. He said, quote, "I had to use the money within a year or else I'd lose my disability and supplemental benefits. I see a psychiatrist to this day. Tipping isn't making one phone call and getting money. Every day I think I'm getting into my car because a lovely lady died. I have PTSD from this case. LA combat, not war combat," end quote. So in the end, the Beverly Hills police closed the file. The reward fight turned into lawsuits, and Hollywood turned the tragedy into entertainment. And Ronni Chasen's friends, colleagues, and plenty of industry insiders kept whispering the same thing. Maybe Harold Smith did it, and maybe he didn't. But either way, the case still doesn't feel solved. Some people accept the official version that Harold was desperate, unstable, facing a potential life sentence under the three strikes law, and he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others look at the contradictions, though, and say, nope, not buying it. What we know for sure, though, is that Ronni Chasen left an enormous mark in Hollywood. She launched campaigns that defined award seasons, championed composers and songwriters who might have gone unnoticed, and even in her 60s, she was planning new adventures. She was going to have hip surgery followed by a summer in Paris, and she didn't get to live out those plans. Instead, she became a mystery, a Hollywood story with an ending that just didn't feel like an ending at all. I guess I can see both sides, right? Like, it's wild that somebody calls in to say that somebody did this and that he turns and shoots himself when confronted. But the thing that really got to me is that one neighbor who said that he said he was given $10,000 for it, but he hadn't been paid before. To me, that theory, I don't know, that comment like kind of stuck with me because that would make sense, right? Somebody desperate taking $10,000 for a hit or whatever. I don't know. Like, to me, that was just something that really stood out that I was like, I could see it either being him and he was paid to do this or maybe not him at all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other in this case. I do definitely think that I don't buy that it was a robbery. I don't think that was the motive behind it. I think for sure that Ronni was targeted on purpose because of who she was. But it is strange because there was no robbery. So I don't think that was ever the motive to begin with. It's just a very sad case.
For sure.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.